You were not pulled to this message for no reason. Something in you has been restless, and no matter how hard you tried to stay busy, that feeling kept returning. It showed up in quiet moments. It followed you through crowded days. It sat beside you at night when everything else finally went still. Maybe you told yourself it was only emotion. Maybe you called it stress, memory, longing, or simple overthinking. But what if it is none of those? What if the feeling that keeps rising inside you is not here to disturb you, but to wake you up? Stay with me, because what you are about to hear may explain the weight you have been carrying in a way your mind has not been able to put into words. And if this message feels strangely personal, that is because some truths do not knock loudly. They arrive quietly, then refuse to leave. So take a breath, slow down for a moment, let the noise fall back. Because what if the connection you keep trying to dismiss is the very thing your soul has been trying to protect? And what if the reason it still matters is because it was never ordinary to begin with? Keep listening, because the next part may be the confirmation you have been waiting for without even knowing how to ask for it. For a long time, you have been holding something inside that you could not easily explain. You kept it private because you already knew how it might sound to other people. Too deep, too intense, too much. So you tried to be sensible. You tried to act normal. You tried to tell yourself that if something was real, it would be easier, clearer, less painful, less confusing. But even while you were saying all that, another voice remained underneath it all, quieter but stronger. A voice that did not disappear when the day changed or when your mood shifted. A voice that kept whispering that this was not random, that this person, this bond, this unshakable inner pull meant more than your logic wanted to allow. You may have pushed it down. You may have walked away from it more than once. You may have filled your hours with work, noise, plans, and distractions just to stop yourself from feeling it so fully. But still it returned. Still it found you. Still it tapped you on the shoulder when you were trying hardest not to turn around. That matters, because some feelings fade when they are ignored. Some attachments weaken when distance grows. Some desires disappear when reality does not feed them. But this did not vanish. It stayed. And that staying power tells you something important. It tells you that what lives in you may not be a problem to solve, but a truth asking to be seen. There is a reason your whole being reacts so strongly to this one person. There is a reason your heart seems to move before your thoughts can catch up. There is a reason the connection feels alive, even in silence, even across distance, even when there is nothing outwardly happening to explain why it still carries so much weight. This was not just a passing meeting. It was not one more face in the crowd, not one more chapter thrown together by chance and then left behind. It touched something deeper. It reached a place in you that ordinary attraction never reaches. It felt like recognition before explanation. It felt familiar before it felt safe. It felt important before you had any evidence to prove that it was. And that is why your mind keeps circling back, trying to label it, trying to shrink it, trying to file it away into something more comfortable and more manageable. But some things cannot be reduced without becoming false. Some connections refuse to fit inside neat language. They move below the level of surface reasoning. They reach into the hidden places of your life, into the parts of you still becoming who you were meant to be. And when that happens, you do not just feel pulled toward another person. You feel pulled toward a version of yourself that has not fully arrived yet. That is why it feels powerful. That is why it feels bigger than timing. And yes, that is why it has been so hard to let go. But how do you know whether this is real and not just pain wearing a beautiful mask? That is the question your mind keeps asking. And honestly, it is a fair one. Because fear knows how to imitate truth. Longing knows how to dress itself up as destiny. Old wounds know how to create stories that feel sacred just because they are intense. So listen carefully. A real soul-deep connection does not only create obsession, it also creates stillness. Somewhere under the ache, there is a strange calm. Somewhere beneath the uncertainty, there is a knowing that does not need constant proof. Even when silence appears, even when time passes, even when life pulls both of you into different places, something in you remains steady. Not because you enjoy the waiting, not because the distance does not hurt, but because the deepest part of you senses that what is real is not erased by space. That kind of peace is not fantasy, it is a sign. Another sign is growth. This person did not just stir your feelings, they woke up hidden parts of you. They exposed patterns you had been living with for years. They brought your fears to the surface, They made you look at your wounds, your hopes, your hunger to be chosen, your fear of being left, your habit of doubting your own inner voice. This connection did not just make you feel more, it made you see more. And if a bond pulls you toward greater honesty, deeper healing, and a larger self, then it is not small. It is doing real work inside you. That is why the intensity has not faded. You tried to explain it away. You tried to bury it under practical thoughts and daily obligations. You tried to wait it out, hoping time would soften it into something forgettable. But real depth does not obey the clock in that way. If this were only emptiness, it would have found a replacement. If this were only loneliness, distraction would have calmed it. If this were only fantasy, life would have exposed it, and the feeling would have broken apart. Yet here you are, still sensing it, still carrying it, still feeling that something unfinished remains alive under the surface. And that does not mean your life must stop. It does not mean you have to cling, chase, or lose yourself in a story you cannot control. It means you need to respect what your inner world is telling you. Not every connection is meant to be dismissed simply because it is difficult to explain. Some arrive to change the structure of your life from the inside. Some appear to stretch you beyond who you were before them. Some refuse to leave because they were never sent just to entertain your heart for a season. They came to alter your direction. So if this bond has kept its weight through silence, through distance, through time, through every attempt you made to push it into a smaller box, then maybe it is time to stop calling it irrational and start asking a deeper question. What is this connection trying to teach you? Because the answer to that question may change everything. And then comes the hardest part, the question that sits like a stone in the chest. If this is so real, why the distance? Why the silence? Why the separation? Why would something that feels deeply aligned be allowed to drift, pause, or disappear from the visible world at all? Here is the truth most people do not want to hear. Real connection does not always arrive in full form the moment two people meet. Sometimes the bond is real, but the timing is still being prepared. Sometimes the recognition is immediate, but the ability to hold it with maturity is not there yet. Sometimes two people meet before they have healed enough, before they have faced enough, before they have become stable enough to carry what the connection demands. And when that happens, life creates a pause, not always as punishment, often as protection. Because something powerful entered your story, and powerful things can become destructive when fear is still in charge. So the silence is not always a sign of failure. The distance is not always proof that nothing was there. Sometimes the pause exists because both people need space to become the kind of people who can return without repeating the same pain. Sit with that. Not every delay is denial. Not every ending is final. Some spaces are sacred workshops, where lives are being rearranged behind the curtain. And if that is what this is, then the quiet season is not empty at all. It is preparation happening out of sight. Think about it. If two people who were only half ready tried to force a connection this deep into a relationship too early, what would happen? Old wounds would start speaking louder than love. Fear would pretend to be truth. Need would disguise itself as devotion. The bond would become heavy, unstable, reactive. One would cling, the other would run. Both would misunderstand what they were being shown. So sometimes life steps in before the damage becomes permanent. Sometimes the pause comes not to destroy what is real, but to keep it from being broken by unhealed patterns. That pause asks each person to face themselves first, to stop building identity around being chosen, to stop looking outside for the peace that must first be built within, to release childhood hurts, hidden shame, guarded habits, and all the silent fears that make love feel dangerous instead of free. This part matters more than most people realize. Because if you need another person to complete you, then even a beautiful connection will turn into pressure. It will become fear of loss. It will become control, overthinking, emotional exhaustion. Real love cannot breathe in that space. So the distance begins doing its own work. It brings your shadows into the light. It shows you where you still abandon yourself. It reveals how much of your suffering came not only from missing them, but from the places inside you that still did not know how to hold your own worth without outside reassurance. This is why the pause can be painful and sacred at the same time. And as you have been changing, do not assume nothing has been happening on the other side. Growth rarely looks dramatic from the outside. In fact, it often looks like silence. It often looks like absence. It often looks like someone staying away because they do not yet know how to face what the connection awakened in them. While you may have been leaning toward clarity, they may have been resisting it. While you have been trying to understand the depth of this bond, they may have been trying to explain it away, minimize it, outrun it, bury it under routine, pride, logic, or distraction. But avoidance is not the same as peace. Silence is not the same as forgetting. Distance is not always the same as indifference. Sometimes it is the exact opposite. Sometimes people grow quiet because what they feel is too real for the version of them that still depends on denial. They tell themselves stories. It meant nothing. It was bad timing. I moved on. I do not care anymore. But life has a way of undoing those stories when they are built on fear. The distractions stop working the same way. The routines lose their comfort. The memories come back sharper. A song hits too hard. A dream feels too real. A strange moment of recognition slips past the walls they spent months building, and suddenly what they tried to call finished begins standing in front of them again, impossible to fully ignore. Stay with this part, because it matters. What looks calm on the surface may actually be an inner battle they do not yet know how to confess. So if they have gone quiet, it does not automatically mean the bond has vanished. It may mean they are standing in the middle of a private collapse, the kind that happens when pride starts losing its grip and truth becomes harder to push away. They may be confronting the cost of their own distance. They may be realizing that walking away did not bring the relief they expected. They may be discovering that what they thought they could easily leave behind has roots much deeper than they ever admitted. And this inner struggle is necessary. Without it, nothing would change. Without it, they would return exactly as they left, carrying the same walls, the same fear, the same confusion, the same instinct to protect themselves by staying half-present. But life is not interested in a half-hearted return. It is pressing both of you towards something more honest than that. A real turning point only comes when the pain of avoidance becomes greater than the fear of truth. And when that moment arrives, movement begins. Not always loudly, not always with dramatic signs at first, but something shifts. The resistance weakens, the excuses lose power, the soul rises higher than the ego for a moment long enough to let clarity through. And when clarity truly lands, people do not come forward because they are bored, lonely, or curious. They come forward because something inside them has finally become impossible to deny. That is the difference. And if that shift is building, then what feels like nothing happening may actually be the ground trembling before the next change. Now let the attention return to you, because this part is important. What signs have been repeating around this person? Be honest with yourself. What keeps showing up? Maybe it is a dream that returns with unusual force. Maybe it is their name appearing when you least expect it. Maybe it is a number pattern, a memory, a certain place, a line from a song, or a sudden wave of knowing that rises without warning. Maybe every time you try to shut the door on this completely, something quiet but clear happens that turns your face back toward it. You do not have to become extreme about signs. You do not have to chase symbols or lose your footing in fantasy. But you also do not have to insult your own intuition by pretending that every meaningful pattern is meaningless. Some things are there to get your attention. Some repetitions are there to guide your focus back toward what your deeper self already knows. And if signs have been appearing, maybe the purpose is not to make you wait harder. Maybe the purpose is to make you trust deeper. Trust not in a forced outcome, not in a scripted reunion, not in a perfect fantasy version of events, but in the reality that what is meant to unfold cannot be erased by fear alone. This is where many people get lost. They sense the truth of a bond, then turn that truth into panic. They grip tighter, they obsess, they stop living. Do not do that. The message is not lose yourself. The message is steady yourself. Become so deeply rooted in your own wholeness that if this connection returns, it finds you strong, open, and clear. Because that is what readiness really looks like. Not sitting by the door, not rehearsing conversations in your mind until dawn, not measuring every day by whether a message comes. Readiness is becoming the version of yourself who no longer needs love to arrive as proof of value. It is clearing resentment from your body. It is releasing the story that silence made you less worthy. It is loosening your grip on how everything must happen. It is learning how to forgive without excusing what hurt you, how to remain soft without becoming naive, how to stay open without abandoning wisdom. This is the inner work that changes the energy of everything. When you stop trying to control the path, you create space for truth to move. When you stop feeding fear with endless mental noise, your spirit gets room to breathe. When you stop making your life smaller around a connection, you become someone who can actually receive it in a healthy way if it returns. And yes, This is hard, because part of you still wants certainty. Part of you still wants a timeline, a sign stamped in bold letters, a moment that removes all doubt. But life does not always work like that. What it asks for instead is trust with clear eyes, growth with both feet on the ground, hope without desperation. That balance is powerful, and the moment you begin living from that place, the connection itself starts feeling different. Less like panic, more like truth, less like chasing, more like alignment, less like emotional survival, more like something quietly preparing to reveal its real shape. If a turning point is coming, it will not arrive as a tiny hint that leaves you starving for crumbs. It will come with a weight you can feel. It will come more clearly than before. When someone has done real inner work, their return carries a different energy. There is humility in it. There is honesty. There is ownership. There is less performance, less confusion, less hiding behind pride. The movement becomes cleaner because the person has changed. And if that moment happens, it will not be because you forced it into existence by suffering correctly. It will be because both of you reached a level of readiness that could hold something more stable than before. That is why this season has mattered so much. It was never only about another person. It was about your becoming, your awakening, your healing, your ability to stand in truth without collapsing into fear. And this is where many stories quietly turn, right here, in the moment when the one who has been waiting stops waiting like a wounded child and starts living like a whole soul. Do not miss that. That shift is everything, because love that returns to a healed and grounded heart does not land the same way it once would have. It lands in clarity, it lands in choice, it lands in freedom, and what is built from that place has a chance to be very different from what would have happened before. Keep listening, because this final part may be what your heart needed most. So here is what you need to carry with you after this. What you feel is not something you need to be ashamed of. The depth of it does not make you foolish. The fact that it stayed does not mean you are weak. But this connection, no matter how real it is, was never meant to pull you away from yourself. It was meant to bring you back to your inner voice, back to your dignity, back to the parts of you that were waiting to be healed, strengthened, and fully seen. If this person is truly part of your path, then what is real will move in the right time and in the right form. And if movement is already beginning beneath the surface, then trust that you do not need to force what truth is already preparing. Your task now is simple, though not easy. Keep your heart open, but keep your feet on the ground. Release fear. Release control. Release the idea that silence means the story is dead. Let life do what it is doing. Let the unseen work finish its work. Let your own soul become a place of peace instead of pressure. Because the deeper truth is this: what is meant for you will not ask you to destroy yourself while you wait for it. It will ask you to become more yourself, more honest, more whole, more alive. And if that is what this connection has been doing all along, then maybe it was never here just to be a romance. Maybe it was here to transform you first, and then, when the time is right, reveal why it entered your life with such force in the first place.